When you combine the dream come true of being a dad with the dream to be of entrepreneurship, you're presented with a world of possibilities along with a world of challenges. Join Joel Lewis as he interviews successful entrepreneur dads sharing how they made it work from the start. This is Startup Dad HQ.
Hey, welcome to Startup Dad Headquarters, where we're exploring the intersection between fatherhood, entrepreneurship, and life. And today's Startup Dads backstage, I'm really excited to have on the show Ryan Levesque. In 2008, armed with nothing but a $450 laptop, an Ivy League background in neuroscience, and an insatiable curiosity to understand why people buy, Ryan left a lucrative career on Wall Street and later in Shanghai, China, to launch a multi-million-dollar online publishing business selling information and software using what's now become the Ask formula, as taught in his book, Ask. Since then, Ryan has used the Ask formula to help build multi-million-dollar businesses in 17 different industries, generating over $100 million in sales in the process. Today, he and his team offer training, consulting, implementing services, and entrepreneurs and businesses at all levels. Ryan, I am really excited to have you on the show. I am blown away with everything that you've accomplished, and I'm so excited to share your Startup Dad journey with the Startup Dad community. Welcome to Startup Dad Headquarters.
Joel, man, thank you so much for having me. I'm just super psyched to be here and to be hanging out with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Ryan, I told the audience, a little bit about you. Please take a second. Let us know what you have going on right now. We're definitely going to jump into your Startup Dad journey, but let us know what's really exciting you about your business right now.
Well, the biggest thing that has me most excited right now is we're in the middle of launching a brand new book. And this is my first, call it, real book ever with a real publishing company that's going to be in Barnes & Noble. It's going to be in airport bookstores. It's going to be around the world. And it's a physical book. And the title of the book, as you mentioned, is Ask, A-S-K. And there's a big, long subtitle behind it, which is the counterintuitive online formula to discover exactly what your customers want to buy, create a mass of raving fans, and take any business to the next level. And that's the thing that has me most excited right now.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, and I can't wait to get my hands on it because I struggle as a startup dad with asking, right? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with that as well. So we definitely want to get into your Startup Dad journey, want to talk a little bit more about the book. But before we dive deep into the early stages of your Startup Dad journey, we have to take care of some important business first. I like to set the stage for this segment of the show with this quote: "No other success can compensate for failure in the home." Would you agree, Ryan?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, listen, it's, businesses come and go, business partners come and go, markets ebb and flow, but families for life, right? So if you don't have that, what's the point? I don't know what motivates you, but, one of the biggest motivators for me is I really just want to be the best example that I can be for my two sons. And for them to look up to dad and say, that's the man that I want to be. And if you're not around and if you're not able to share that with them, then that becomes impossible. So for me, I totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And my three girls are absolutely my motivator. So let us jump into the first segment, Family First. I asked you to submit a family fun photo. You sent us a fantastic photo of your family. So please let us know what's going on here in this image here. It looks like the baby just came home and his brother's kind of like peeking over and like, what's this new toy?
Yep. So our son was born in September of 2014, and he came about 5 weeks early. and we had just moved into a new house that we had built, and my wife, you know, woke up one morning and said, Ryan, I think we need to go to the hospital. And we went. We weren't expecting to have a baby that day, but we had the baby, and he had to be medevaced out to a specialty NICU facility. I think it's called a level 3 facility where they have specialist care, and he spent almost a couple weeks there, and we finally had the chance to take him home. This was shortly before the holidays, and we wanted to do our family Christmas photo, family Christmas cards, so we brought a photographer in the house, and I think this was the one photo that we got where all 4 of us were actually looking at the camera, smiling, happy. We have another 36 photos of, you know, my 2-year-old at the time. He's 2 years old. He's almost 3 now. The 2-year-old, you know, screaming, and then my wife grabbing the baby and him trying to grab the leg. So there's a lot of those that are kind of blurry, but this was the one that was Christmas card worthy. So I decided to share this one.
Yeah, it's an awesome photo, and I could definitely relate with trying to get everyone to look at the screen. Usually, I don't know if you're doing it. What's your 3-year-old son's name?
Henry.
Henry. I don't know if you're doing it, but usually I'm tickling one of the kids behind.
Oh yeah, yep. I know Henry has a tickle spot. Bradley, our younger son, has a tickle spot as well. I know, and it's like, all right, when you gotta like bust out the big guns to make them laugh, it's
Right.
like, all right, we gotta do the tickle thing. So totally, man. It's a classic dad move. I think every dad has that in his arsenal.
Exactly. You know, Ryan, we didn't talk about this before we launched, but my wife is actually a NICU nurse.
Oh wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. She works at the hospital here in Massachusetts, UMass Memorial Hospital.
Oh sure, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
amazing.
yeah, I know how it is. So 5 weeks, usually. So he must have had some other issues going on, right? Because 5 weeks, I think he
It's
should.
close. It's on the
Yeah,
cusp, but he had breathing issues. He wasn't able to breathe on his own, and there are a few other issues as well. But so he was on a respirator when he came out, and they had to medevac him out to the hospital that we were at. Had I think called a level 1 NICU,
yeah.
and we had to medevac about an hour or so away to the large hospital here. That's cool, man. I didn't realize you're from Massachusetts. I don't know why I didn't know that. I actually grew up in New Hampshire. So we live in Texas now, in Austin, Texas, but New Hampshire is my home, so my home state. So I spent a lot of time in Massachusetts, and I'm very familiar with the hospital that your wife works at. So that's pretty cool.
Nice, nice. So you ran away from the cold weather, I see.
Absolutely, man. Like you're probably you've got the what is it, Snowmageddon or whatever they're calling it.
Exactly. It's coming.
Yeah, it's about 65 degrees and sunny out here. So
Thanks.
not to rub it in.
Thanks.
Yeah, you can call me in July when it's like 106 degrees here, and I'm like sweating my tail off.
Right. Awesome. So, Ryan, what does fatherhood mean to you?
I mean, it means a lot of things. I think, like we talked about, it's about serving as an example. It's about providing opportunity. It's about paying attention to things, room for exploration and room for growth. So I'm a big believer in providing opportunities, but not demanding our kids take any one direction. So give them the opportunity to explore, but then pay really close attention to where their natural interests tend to be, and then allow them to explore that further. So there's so much more to fatherhood than that, but those are just a few things that come to mind.
Yeah, and I really connect with that piece where paying attention and seeing what direction they want to go into, like what's their natural, the things that they kind of levitate towards or they connect with quickly. So
Yep.
and then just providing the support to kind of push that forward. So I definitely agree with that.
Yep, totally.
Now, how do you balance between everything you have going on? We talked earlier about the all-nighter before we launched, but
Yes.
how are you balancing all of that, and then your newborn and the business and everything like that?
I'll be perfectly honest. It's a challenge. It really is a challenge. I mean, you remember when your kids were younger, and I don't know if you or your wife or how you divvy things up when the kids are getting up a couple times in the middle of the night, and it's sort of like the domino effect happens, right? Where it's like one kid wakes up, and then that wakes up the other kid, and then no one's asleep, and so everyone's awake, and then everybody gets poor sleep, and so it's sort of like, when you don't get sleep, you don't have good resilience, and then you're more short-tempered and everything like that. So it's a challenge. I'm not going to lie. My perspective, though, and I have a plan for this, is it's right now I'm in the stage in our business where I'm walking through the hot coals. And what I mean by that is there's a period, and it's not forever, but there's a period where you've got to do some tough stuff that is going to require a lot of time to get to the other side of those hot coals where you're back on safe ground. And in order to do what I want to do in our business and achieve the level of growth that I want to achieve, right now is one of those times. We're launching this book, which is a much bigger task than I originally imagined. We're expanding our team, so I think we're bringing on 3 or 4 new full-time team members in the next 2 weeks. So there's a lot of ramping up, but it's all with the objective of taking myself out of the business a lot more than I am right now, to free me up to be able to do things like, I was mentioning on a conversation I was having this morning with someone, my favorite thing in the world, and I'm a total geek about this, is like playing Legos with my 3-year-old. It's like, hey, Henry, let's get a Lego set. Go to Walmart, get a Lego set, come home. It's like my favorite thing in the world. And so I'm trying to engineer our business to be able to do more of that. And it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but I have a plan in place, and we're getting through it. So short answer is, it's not easy. It's a challenge, but doing the best that we can.
Yeah, yeah. And, I love that answer. I love the fact that you want to basically, and what Startup Dad is all about is dads who want to be engaged, dads who want to be involved and spend time with their children. And the fact that you understand that you have to go through this cold phase, right, where you're walking through the hot cold, so that you can have that freedom on the other side is amazing.
Yep. Yeah. No, totally.
Ryan, let's get down to it. Besides throwing out the trash, what's one way you help out around the house that is not traditionally considered a man chore?
Gosh, not traditionally a man chore. You're putting me on the spot. I'm not that good about this stuff. Okay, maybe this is a dad thing or not. I'm the designated gross stuff adult in the house. Okay, so diaper blowout doesn't faze me. Throw up, I'm like Mr. Cool. I am so calm. Projectile vomit in the car, my wife is freaking out. I'm just very calm, and I can handle it. So I'm the designated cleanup guy when there's something like that. So, and my wife will call me, Ryan, and I know. All I need is my name with the right intonation, and I kind of know. I'm like, oh, it's either a poop situation or a vomit situation. So I don't know if that's a traditional mom or dad thing or whatnot, but at least in our house, that's I play that role.
Yeah, yeah, and I know your wife absolutely appreciates that role because those blowouts, man, oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They can leave you scarred, some of them.
Yeah. Yep. You know it.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that's a first, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Well, my kids are that age, so if my kids were 7, 8, 10 years old, then maybe we'd be a little bit worried. But our kids are 4 months and 3. So
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ryan, I'm sorry. Our next segment is called True Startup Dad Story.
Okay.
And with this being Startup Dad headquarters, we want to focus on your start. One of my favorite quotes is, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." So, Ryan, please take us back to the beginning of the early stages of your Startup Dad journey.
Sure. It's a time now I look back at fondly. At the time, there was definitely a lot of anxiety. So in a nutshell, so I graduated from college. After college, I worked on Wall Street, and then later in Shanghai, China. And I had a really good paying job. I had a high six-figure job, and I was based in Shanghai. My wife was based in Hong Kong. She was pursuing graduate school at Hong Kong University. So we were living this crazy bi-country marriage, and this was before we had kids. And basically at 25 years old, I had this quarter-life crisis. I realized I had achieved professionally everything that I had wanted to achieve, was making good money, great lifestyle, but I was working this crazy job. I was tethered to the BlackBerry. I was living out of hotels. I was on a plane every other week, and I wasn't fulfilled. And I wrote this crazy 20-page letter to my mom, which was something that was extremely private. It was really a letter to myself, but I addressed it to my mom. Very private letter, which is actually in the book. And my publisher convinced me to put it in the book, much to my embarrassment. And it basically laid it all on the line and said, listen, I have this fire inside of me, and I feel like if I don't do something about it now, it's going to be extinguished. And there's just a little bit left. And if I'm not careful, if I keep going down the path I'm going down and get sucked in with the golden handcuffs, it's going to be gone forever, and it's never going to ignite again. And so I said, so you're going to think I'm crazy, but I'm about to leave it all behind. I don't know if it's going to happen next week, next month, or 6 months from now, but I'm going to be quitting my job, and I'm going to be doing this new thing. It's a money-making project. I can't give you the details because I don't even really know the details yet, but I'm going to do something because I feel like I have to make a run for it. I've got to do this. And this was in 2008, and within 6 months, I quit my job. I quit my job right in the middle of the 2008 financial crisis when Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and all these companies were going bankrupt. When I walked into my office and I picked up the Wall Street Journal Asia edition, and the headline read, AIG, the company I was working for, American International Group, AIG is filing for bankruptcy. They ended up not filing for bankruptcy, but I got that headline, and I called my wife up and I said, honey, I think today's the day. Let's do it.
Wow.
And we had this fledgling business that we had started in the background, nights and weekends. It was a business in this tiny, random, obscure market that my wife was involved in, which was the Scrabble tile jewelry market. We were teaching people how to make Scrabble tile jewelry through a series of tutorials that we sold online. And I felt confident that if I left my job and I could just focus on growing that we would be able to take that business and make it into something big. Well, life doesn't always work out the way we plan it to work out. So I quit my job, donated everything that I owned to a charity in China because I couldn't really do anything with it except for 2 suitcases of stuff. Moved in with my wife in Hong Kong, and she was getting her PhD, and she had a $500 a month stipend. We lived on $500 a month. We had a 400-square-foot apartment. The only thing that I owned really of any value was that $450 laptop that you mentioned at the beginning.
Right.
And I got to work. And it was less than a month after the world financial crisis hit and the market crashed that the Scrabble tile jewelry market crashed as well. And at this point, it was one of those, oh crap, what are we going to do? And my wife and I, we got together and we said, well, we're going to make this work. My wife started applying for different positions, and she got a job offer in Texas, which is her home state, at the Brownsville Historical Association as a museum curator. And it didn't pay much. It paid $36,000 a year, but the museum world is not a big money opportunity, but it was enough to cover our living expenses. So we, once again, got rid of everything that we owned in Hong Kong, moved back to the States, 2 suitcases each, moved into a crappy apartment, owned no furniture. We had a $200 mattress that we bought. Our living room furniture, Joel, was these 2, those collapsible lawn chairs, like when you're watching a soccer game or something like that. Yeah. We got 2 of those for opening up our corporate bank account. That was our living room furniture, and I'm not exaggerating. That was like what we would sit on, and we got a TV off of Craigslist for $5 with rabbit ears that we had to jam into the windowsill to get like additional reception.
Right.
That's all we owned. We had 1 car. I drove my wife to and from work, and during the day, I just busted my butt to launch what became what I call our first real business, which we took from nothing to $25,000 a month within 18 months, and really have never looked back since. But those early days, I'll tell you, man, I look back and I'm glad that we lived through them. I have a mentor of mine that likes to call them ramen noodle and bologna sandwich days, right? Where, you know, you ain't eating fancy, you're kind of just, you know, you're getting by. But it built character, and more importantly, now that we have a multi-million-dollar company, a team of 20 people, and we're doing well, it reminds me that that's where we all start. I didn't grow up with money. I grew up first person in my family to go to college. You know, it wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth or anything like that. So I knew that if we could get through those lean days, we could get through anything. And when we did that, it eliminated the fear of what if? What if this doesn't work? Well, I lived that. We lived through those days. We know what if. Well, that's exactly what happened. And if we had to, we would do it again. And I know that I have someone, my wife, that is supportive enough to do that. Now, with 2 kids, I don't want to ever live through those days again. But having gone through them, I don't have that fear of the unknown because we lived through it. So that's, in a nutshell, the early days of how things kind of got started.
Yeah, wow, that is so inspiring. And just your story alone, I mean, at the age of 25 to be working in Wall Street, so that was in New York City, right? And you decided to leave that. I mean, I could definitely see the catalyst for leaving, right?
Yeah.
You had this burning desire, the fire inside you, and that 2008, that newspaper, it was like, hey, man, this is my time, right? I mean, it was a clear sign. So absolutely, but how do you go? I guess my first question is, how did you? Because Wall Street, New York, I mean,
China, you got to remember. Then we went to China. So like we quit the job when we were when I was actually working for AIG in our Shanghai office. So yeah, there's a couple steps.
yeah. I mean, how do you go from such high end to like in a what I forget the size of your apartment in China, but like I mean, how do you go from such a high end prestigious job to now you're running your Scrabble pile jewelry market in a tiny little apartment with a $450 laptop? How did that feel? Did you feel like you were taking a huge step backwards?
It did. You know, it did and it didn't. Everyone thought I was crazy except for my wife. The fall from grace was actually much higher than that. You have to understand. First person in my family to go to college, Ivy League, didn't have any money growing up, pride of the family, right? My parents, you know, put so much faith and were so proud of me. And I went to Brown with the expectation that I was going to become a neuroscientist. I studied neuroscience at the undergraduate level, and my best friend in college is now a neurologist at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, which, as you know, as your wife's in medicine, it's one of the most prestigious medical institutions in the world. He went all the way. In college, I realized I didn't quite have the chops. Like I was smart, but I wasn't that smart. You know what I mean? Like I was good, but I wasn't brilliant, and he was brilliant. And I had this come to terms kind of situation where I had to tell my parents, listen, it ain't going to happen. Like your kid's not going to be a neurosurgeon. I'm sorry. And I had this other random interest at the same time, which was Asian studies, Chinese studies. So imagine telling your parents who are expecting you to become a doctor, become maybe a neurosurgeon or a neurologist or something like that, and say, so I'm not going to do the neuro thing, but I'm really interested in Chinese, and I'm going to spend the summer backpacking in China and learning the language. And then being like, can you make money doing that? Like that's my parents' reaction. Like, how do you get a job doing that, right? And then so I came back and then did the Wall Street thing. But I had this burning desire to use that Chinese, and I wanted to do business in China. It's a wild, wild west, tons of opportunity. Love the language, love the culture. Wanted to have that experience. And so left big money behind in New York to take a job in Shanghai, which later paid very well. But at the time, it was a little setback. And again, my parents were like, what the hell are you doing? You've got this awesome, stratospheric, path. All you got to do is implement, and you're going to be making millions of dollars a year on Wall Street. What are you doing? And I told him, it's not me, man. It just wasn't me. And then going from that to saying, oh yeah, I know I have this great corporate job, and my parents saw where I worked, my office, the suits. I had a staff of 24 people that reported to me, big title, fancy business cards, the whole thing, to I'm going to sell ebooks online now. and I'm going to quit my job. I mean, yeah, I mean, everyone, my parents included, thought I was nuts. But here's the thing, you know, we're more, you know, financially, we're in a position now where I'm making far more money than I would be in corporate America. That's number one. Love what I'm doing. I get to work from home. You don't see it right now, but I'm in shorts, you know, and you know, I get to work when I want to work. I've set up our house, our lifestyle exactly how we want it. Theoretically, if I wanted to just say, you know what, screw it, I'm going to take a week off or a month off, it would be tough for me to do it now, but I don't have any boss or anything like that saying, no, you can't do it. Like, I'm the boss.
Yeah.
Feels really good. And, you know, I know so many people listening to this, because I went through this so I can identify, it's that fear of leaving the steady paycheck. Right?
Yeah.
The fear of like, oh, this money's coming in, but what if? But what if? And for everybody, the decision of when is individual. It's really hard. But I'll say this: you're never going to be ready. Like, you're never going to be ready. I wasn't ready. I mean, we did it, and what we did, my philosophy was, let's cut our living expenses to as small as they can. That's why, to answer your question, we went from this I went from this fancy apartment in Shanghai with house servants down to this tiny 400 square foot apartment in Hong Kong, you know, eating tuna fish and white bread, you know, to save money. You know, I knew that if we kept our living expenses really tight and didn't let ourselves go crazy, that it would give us a chance.
Yeah.
Right? It would allow us to stretch the money that we had saved away, and living on that $500 a month salary was important. It would allow us to stretch that as much as possible and buy us time. And that's what I said. I realized that the way most people fail in business, not because they have a bad idea, they just don't have enough time. They run out of runway. They run out of money, so they have to go back, they have to get a job. Businesses raise capital, the money dries up, and they go out of business. It's usually because they don't get to their destination in the time that they have. So I said, if we just be really frugal about that and just, you know, no fancy dinners, no dinners at all, no new clothes, no fancy cars, no nothing, no cable, nothing, like no movies out, no dates or anything like that. If we just do this for a period of time, again, walking through the coals, then we're going to get through the other side. And, you know, now we're in a position where, I mean, geez, I just bought my wife a Tesla, you know, so like, you know, success happens, and it happens from humble beginnings. And if, you know, you're not there yet, I get it, because I remember seeing people at that level and saying, I'll never get there. How am I ever going to get there? But with focus, determination, and the right plan, you know, you can get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're going to talk about failure later on in the show, and I want to come back and talk about the Scrabble pile jewelry, but tell us, how did you go from that to your next business? So, you know, like, what made you decide to become an online marketer? What made you decide to take the path that you took, again, going from the previous business that failed, or not failed, but the market just crashed, right? So it was kind of like out of your control, to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, I made a miscalculation in that business. So the market failed, but at the end of the day, I should have seen it. It was a fad market, right? It's Beanie Babies, Pogs, like so many of these markets that they go really big and they get, you know, I didn't recognize it. I was too naive. I thought it was just going to go up, 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 and I thought, man, if the market keeps growing like it's growing, sooner business is going to be twice as big and 3 times as big. I didn't recognize, you know, what I should have seen a mile away, which this is just the market's going to bust, right? This is a bubble. And so I take responsibility for that mistake. So how did I get into this business model? Well, when I was working for AIG, I was obsessed with wanting to start my own business. And I literally thought of probably every business model you can think of, like crazy stuff. Like at one point, I was going to start an import-export company. At another point, I was going to start a Chinese tutoring agency. At another point, I was going to open up a McDonald's in China. I thought, McDonald's is all over China, but I was going to become a franchisee, open up a restaurant. I mean, so many different things. But none of them felt right. And one of the reasons why is I didn't want something that required a ton of startup capital. Like I'm very risk averse. I wanted something that I could get going for just a few dollars, not a lot of money. If it didn't work out, it wasn't going to bankrupt us. And so I started investing in how to make money programs. and I would have them shipped all the way to China. They'd arrive in boxes. They'd be beat to hell. I mean, they would just be all banged up, DVDs broken, everything like that. You know, the customs office would rifle through it, and they're, you know, going through all the stuff to make sure there's no contraband, or like they're really sensitive in China about like certain fiction and certain works of literature that they don't let inside the country, so they're sensitive to things like that. So I get this stuff, and most of the stuff, Joel, to be perfectly honest, was total BS. I mean, it was like I read it and I'm like, I felt like such an idiot. Like I spent money on stuff, and it was like, what the hell was I thinking? I remember spending money on this course. It was probably like $500, and it was basically this. It was DVDs of these two guys hired a consultant to come in on their business, and they like put a video camera in the corner of the room, like filming the thing, like almost like a security camera, like on the, you know, corner of there, and like audio going, and it was like $500 on like 20 DVDs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I spent, and because I was in China, I couldn't ship the thing back because it was going to cost me like $300 in shipping to ship like the, you know, the big heavy box. So I just had to eat the cost. So I'd made every mistake in the book. But eventually I stumbled upon someone who has really become one of, if not the most influential mentor in my online business career. And it's a man by the name of Dr. Glenn Livingston. In fact, Dr. Glenn wrote the foreword for the book that we mentioned at the beginning of this call. Dr. Glenn is someone who comes from corporate America, and he had a major business failure right before 9/11, where he invested a ton of money into a facility, like $2 million into a focus group facility with his wife, and he launched the facility like 10 days before 9/11. And the business just completely bombed. No one was traveling. No one was doing focus groups. And so they had to close up the company, went $2 million in debt, and walked away with that, like kind of like with the tail between his legs. And so he was extremely risk averse. But he knew this research methodology that he applied in corporate America, and he started applying it in these tiny little niche markets like guinea pig care and raising pygmy goats and radon detection and body language and all these different markets, and eventually grew a business that was making about $30,000 a month in all these little niche markets. And that approach resonated with me, and I was fixated on the idea that there are riches and niches. If you pick a niche and and dominate that niche, you can do really well. So that's what led me to this obscure random niche of the Scrabble tile market, and I said I'm going to apply his approach to the market. And initially, I struggled with some getting traction, but eventually we got some traction when we started applying one of the things that I advocate and teach in the book, which is instead of treating your market as one market and having a one-size-fits-all solution, the real secret that very few people do is you speak to different segments of your market differently. You have different marketing messaging. You have different products that you might sell. And the way you figure out what those segments are is by asking the right questions. So that was the thing that led me to success initially. Now, when the Scrabble tile market completely tanked, I made a decision. I said, I'm never going to go in a fad market ever again. It was a huge learning experience for me, and I'm glad I went through it early. And so I said, I'm only going to go in markets that people have been wanting a solution for a very long period of time. So the next business that we went into was a niche within the gardening market. And then we went into the memory improvement market. And then I started really dialing in my approach to the effect that when I started attending masterminds with other business owners and telling people what I was doing, eventually a business owner who had a much bigger business than I did approached me and said, you know, Ryan, what would it take to pay you to do what you've done for your business in my business? And I'll tell you, Joel, at the time, it wasn't something that I was considering. My business model was, all right, I'm going to launch 20 $500,000 businesses in all these little niches, and if you add it all up together, I'll have a $10 million business, and I'll be in all these different markets, and life is going to be grand. But a business that was already at that level, at the $10, $20 million level, approached me and said, what if we just pay you a big pile of money, and we'll give you some upside, we'll give you a percentage of the deal, just do this for us and see what happens. And it ended up working like gangbusters. And that's what led me to the model, a shift of, well, let's just do this in market after market with business after business. And that's how we've gotten into the dog training market, the golf instruction market, tennis instruction market, satellite services, business funding, fitness, weight loss. The list goes on. It's all from those early days of having success, proving the model ourselves, and then replicating it in market after market after market. And today, our focus has shifted yet again, where now we're focused on teaching this and trying to help as many entrepreneurs, as many business owners as possible get their hands on this process so they can use it in their business as well. And that's why I'm so excited today. And that's why the book has me so excited.
Yeah, that is amazing. And can you share with us real quickly, what are your, when you get into so many different niches, what is your process for validation? How do you know, again, not going into you said you don't want to go into a fad market, you want to kind of validate and test before you jump in. What is your process for all these businesses that you've been part of?
It's a really great question. So I have this framework. It's something that I teach, and we have a program that teaches it. It's called the Green Light Project Checklist. And basically the way I approach any new project, any new product, any new market or niche that we might consider entering is I go through these series of parameters. And I'm looking at each parameter, is it a green light, a yellow light, or a red light? So for example, I have this one framework within the Green Light Project Checklist that I look at, and I call it my 5 market must-haves. There are 5 things that I'm looking for in any market. One of them is the fact that it's evergreen. Another is the fact that there are addicted buyers, meaning that people just are passionate and they're almost addicted to what it is that you're selling. Not addicted in the drug sense, but addicted in the sense that, dog owners, for example, are extremely passionate about their dogs, right? Mm-hmm. They're almost addicted to buying stuff and taking care of their dogs. So I have this 5 market must-haves that I have. And if a market meets all 5, it's a green light. If the market meets 4 out of 5, it's a yellow light, meaning I might still consider the market, but I have reservations. And if it's any less than 4, then it's a red light, and I kill the project right there. Wow. If it passes my 5 market must-haves with either a green light or a yellow light, then I go to my next thing. And I'm looking for next set of circumstances or set of criteria whenever I'm getting into a market. And so I'll look at the competitive landscape, and I'll see how many competitors are there, and I'm looking for a sweet spot. If there's no competition, then that tells me it's a bad market. Most people think, no competition
is good, right?
It's good, right? Well, I'll tell you what, there's 7 billion people on the planet. You're not the first one with whatever idea you have. I'm telling you that right now. Someone else has tried it and they failed. No competition means someone tried to make it work and they could not make it work. Competition is a good thing because competition proves that there is a market for this. And there's this saying that I always have in my head, which is, pioneers get shot, but settlers get rich. If you want to be a pioneer, go for it, but don't expect that you're going to get rich off of it. If you look at all the most successful companies in the world, Apple did not create the first smartphone, did not create the first MP3 player. Google was not the first search engine by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
So pioneers get shot, and the first search engines, we don't even hear about them anymore. Funny enough, relevant to our conversation, Ask Jeeves. Who uses Ask Jeeves? Or what about Lycos? I mean, do you remember the days of, Lycos and Excite.com? Do you remember that site? I don't even know what Excite.com is nowadays. Google's eclipsed them. So they weren't the first, but they were the one that refined things. So there's a series of parameters, and some of them are qualitative, like we discussed, and others are quantitative. Like, for example, I'm looking for certain traffic in a given market. How many people are searching on Google on the keywords that solve the problem that I'm trying to solve? So in the dog training market, maybe a project I'm considering pursuing is helping owners when their dogs won't come. Right? So dog won't come when you're listening, when you say, come on, come on, come on, and just won't listen to you, right? So there's a set of keywords that people might search on Google to, indicate that they want a solution to that problem. Well, I'm looking for a sweet spot. Too few, probably not worth my time. Too many, it probably means it's too competitive and my targeting is too broad. So there's a series of things that can really help guide you if you're in a winning situation or if you're not. And that's one of the reasons why, with one, maybe 2 exceptions, every project that I've pursued, we've succeeded. Because if it doesn't meet these criteria, I kill it early on and just move on to the next one. Another saying that I always leave people with, and I'm not the inventor of this, I'm the retailer of this, a marketer, a copywriter by the name of Gary Halbert was the person that I learned this from, reading his teachings, was he used to say, I'm not looking for challenges, I'm looking for setups. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for challenges. It's tough enough when
Yeah.
the deck is stacked in your favor to do everything to make it work. Why make it hard on yourself? There's
Right.
so many opportunities out there. Find one that's a setup, not a challenge.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And what is the name of that program that you have, the green light market checklist?
A
That's the
green light project checklist.
project
And,
checklist.
and the reason why it's called project, not market, is because you can use it to help evaluate a new market, but you can also use it if you're thinking about pursuing a new project. Like maybe you have some ideas, Joel, that you might want to pursue in your existing business. They don't necessarily represent going into a new market, but you're deciding, like, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Or maybe you're thinking about launching a new product, right? Whether it's a book or a second podcast or a training course or something like that. This framework helps you identify, is this a good fit or not? And it's a really good framework if you are struggling with, what should your next move be? The market that you're thinking about, is it a good fit or not?
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely want you to plug that in at the end of the show because that is something absolutely startup dads need to get their hands on.
Cool.
And because, like you said, right, and like we've been talking about, as a dad, when you have the children and when you have children and a wife to provide for, the risk and the fear of failure uh, intensifies.
Yeah.
So you want to try to reduce that risk as much as possible. And that green light, the green light market, the green light project checklist sounds.
Yeah.
It sounds like when I listen to you talk, I'm hearing a little bit of Lean Startup by Eric Ries. I'm
Yep.
hearing things that I've learned from Pat Flynn with Google using Google keywords to kind of there's a certain number that you're looking for and trying to identify your niche market. So I love that you packaged it, all that together in something tangible that the startup dads can get their hands on and use to validate their ideas.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
Ryan, what does it mean to you being an entrepreneur? And this is the last question before we go into our next segment, and we definitely start to pick up the pace after this one.
I know you warned me of that. What does it mean to be an entrepreneur? I flip-flopped on this, and I feel like there are three roles that I realize I play almost simultaneously. And I'll be honest, I haven't figured out which one I really am, and it's probably a mix of the three. So I play a mix of entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is, in my mind, as a leader or as an entrepreneur, really I view that you only have two roles. Two roles are to predict and delegate. Predict and delegate. That's it. Now, am I doing that now? Not exactly. And the reason why is because I'm wearing a couple other hats. So the second hat is I'm a very skilled craftsman at what I do. So this is classic E-Myth stuff, working on your business versus working in your business.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm the best copywriter in our company right now. And so I'm very skilled at that specific craft. So I'm a skilled craftsman, which is not really entrepreneurial. It's very much, being excellent at anything, whether that's painting or, carpentry or, writing sales copy. It's really just being skilled at a craft. And then the third hat that I wear is manager. And, managing a staff of 15, 20 people requires management skills. And, I'm fortunate to be exposed to a few professional managers in my past career that were not entrepreneurs, not skills craftsmen. They're just professional managers and very good in my corporate days. And so I have a little bit that's rubbed off on me. But I don't necessarily consider myself, just one of those things and necessarily excellent at any of them. I feel like I still got a lot to learn, a lot to grow, but I find myself wearing those three hats simultaneously and having to jump between them on a daily basis almost. And so I think being an entrepreneur probably means wearing a few hats, being willing to wear a few hats, being willing to do everything from close sales deals to clean the toilets if you need to, and try to reach a point where all you're doing is predicting and delegating. And that's the goal that I have, and what I'm working towards is to set up our company infrastructure so that's all I do. Predict, delegate.
Yeah, I love that because as you know, a lot of entrepreneurs are so busy working in their business, right, and not
Yep.
on the business. So,
Hey, listen, man. First 2, 3 years of our business, my wife and I, we would sit in front of the TV on a Friday night, and we'd have a stack of books or information products that we were selling. We'd have a stack of labels. We'd put Netflix on, order takeout, and we'd sit on the floor for like 3, 4 hours. We'd stuff envelopes with books, seal them, put the labels on. I'd drive them to the post office, go with crates of stuff, drop them. I mean, so I've done everything. I've answered the phone. I've done customer service. And you know what? There's no shame in that.
right.
There's absolutely no shame. You do what you got to do. When you start your business and you're the only employee, you got to do it all. But the name of the game is you want to start getting yourself out of those tasks as fast as possible. And that's one of the biggest regrets or mistakes that I made in our business is I was a little too slow to let go and have the confidence to hire a team.
Right.
I had this mentality that we had to hang on to every cent of profit. And I remember those early lean days when things were tough, every cent of profit, because who knows? My mind has really shifted, and I've seen the power of hiring people who are smarter than me and paying decent money for that to bring in advisors as consultants. That's helped me grow a tremendous amount. And then bringing in a team for implementation to actually do the work that I was previously doing. So let's get to the pick up the pace round, my man.
All right, Ryan, it's time for Real Dads, Real Talk. This is where we go deep, and I ask a series of tough questions that we can't skip over. Are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
All right. So we talked about failure earlier with the previous project. We want to talk about doubt and fear right now.
Yep.
I want to start specifically from the perspective of a father and a provider. What has been one of the doubts or fears that you struggle with, and how have you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, my wife works in the business with me, and she manages our books, and she handles some of our fulfillment vendors, and she kind of serves as our HR director, so she handles payroll. But she's a mom. Like, first and foremost, she's a mom, and she works in the business as much as she's able to part-time. The burden of responsibility to as breadwinner is on my shoulders. So, and I don't take that lightly. And I'm a pretty competitive, pretty focused person. And I've had failures and setbacks like everybody, but I've never failed at anything big that I've put my mind to. Like, I've been knocked down and gotten back up. So as far as fear and doubt, for me, it's more about being willing to let go a little bit. Like, I think I work harder than I need to work, right? Like, we don't have the type of lifestyle that's super high consumption, and yeah, I bought my wife a nice car, and we have nice stuff, but it's not like, we don't have like a mansion or anything like that. I mean, we're not like taking these crazy African safari vacations. Like, we take vacations in Austin. We do a weekend getaway. I was talking about this in a conversation with someone this morning. This is what I wear every single day. I've got like 23 of these shirts. You know where I get these shirts, Joel? Target. Yeah, $9.99. Target on sale. When the things wear out, I throw them away and I buy more. I've got a closet full of them, and I wear the same thing every single day. And it's not. I don't have expensive taste, but I find myself pushing a little bit harder than we probably need to. My wife always reminds me. She says, "Why are you working so hard?" And I don't know, and I struggle with that balance. But I really, we haven't talked about it. I had a near-death experience about 3 years ago, and that really put my life into focus and really made me come to terms with my own mortality, and made me realize that, like, if I'm not here, I have to leave my family in a good place. And so, it's an indirect. I mean, it's not a direct answer to your question, but you've sparked some thoughts in my head, and I hope that gives a little bit of insight, at least into the way I think. So if I were to answer your direct question, fear, doubt, it's if I let up on the gas, am I, we're still going to be doing okay. Yeah. I've got the pedal to the metal right now, and I know how fast I can go, but if I let my foot up on the gas, I guess my concern is, am I going to become complacent, lazy? Are things going to start to slip? So that's probably the biggest doubt in my mind.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to that fire inside, right? Keeping that fire lit and burning all the time, right? Yeah.
Yep. It's hard to turn it off. Once you got it going, man, right? It's like, a bonfire. once it starts shrinking, it can shrink to nothing. But
Mhm.
once it's there, I mean, it can take over, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it can burn down acres. So it's tough to keep it in that safe zone where it's big enough to be powerful and it doesn't start to extinguish, but not so big that it's consuming.
Yeah.
And so that's the struggle the challenge I constantly struggle with.
Yeah, definitely. What's the hardest personal sacrifice you've had to make?
Whew. I would say short-term kind of pleasure things that I've wanted that cost money and would be time away for the business in favor of putting the time in now. And so, like for example, we've talked about just maybe doing a vacation somewhere for like 3 months, going to Europe for 3 months or something like that. There have been just material purchases that I've wanted that I've put off just to be financially responsible. Like for example, one thing that I'm battling with right now is there's a car that I want. Pretty expensive car. I can afford it. I can pay cash for it. But is it the right move? And that's tough because like my part of me is like, yeah, just freaking do it. You deserve it and go for it. And then another part of me is like, but what if I do this and then everything goes south and then I'm going to look like an idiot because I have this. I'm going to be the idiot with the fancy freaking car whose business is failing. And so maybe I'll just put it off.
Right.
And so there's a lot of that. And so that happens now, even at the level that we're at right now. And it definitely happened at the beginning. That $400 laptop, put it this way, I dropped that laptop in an airport in LA on our way home from Asia, and the thing cracked and the screen was all blurry. And when you would open it up, you'd have to like push it down a little bit so like the thing wasn't all janky. And like if you used it long enough, it would start to get all like messed up again. I kept that thing for 5 years.
Wow.
I built a multi-million-dollar business on that thing for 5 years. I mean, I should have gotten rid of that thing like months after that happened. But why? I mean, I was a little bit fearful to spend the money. So a lot of sacrifices like that, a lot of financial sacrifices. But yeah, man.
Yeah, wow, that is that is really impressive because I know I would have went out and bought me a MacBook Pro.
Well, that's what I got now, man. I was 2 years ago. I was like, all right, enough of this. Like, I'm buying not only a MacBook Pro, but like I just like click all the check boxes. Like the most that they sell. Like I don't even need it. I don't even know what it does, but I want the biggest number.
Exactly. Right, Ryan, one of the biggest limiters keeping dads from taking action and
Yep.
starting their own business is private health insurance.
Yep.
What do you do for insurance for your family to make sure that your family is adequately covered?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we have private health insurance that we pay out of pocket. I don't know what our premiums now with kids. It's, gosh, I don't know, $600 a month, $700. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe 500. I honestly don't know. I do remember when we started, it was just my wife and I think it was about $270 a month, but it was just the two of us. Kids add number to that, but we pay it out of pocket. It's a high deductible HSA plan. We put money away to pay for things. I'll be honest, like it's, you just got to account for it. Perfect example, we had a baby last year and in 2014, and with our private health insurance, maternity coverage not covered. You have a baby, just not covered. Now, when the baby's born, the baby's covered. So when our son was in the NICU, all of his expenses were covered, but the actual hospital birth, insurance doesn't cover anything. Now, the good news is, so we paid that out of pocket, and I'd have to ask my wife what we ended up paying. It was somewhere between $8,000 and $12,000, I think. I can't remember. Out of pocket for just a normal delivery, no real complications, 1 day in the hospital, like not a big deal or anything like that. But she was able to negotiate that down. I think originally it was like a $25,000 or $30,000 bill, but what you can do when you're paying cash, especially if you have a really bargain hunting, negotiating savvy wife, like I'm fortunate enough to have, you're able to get that number quite down. So it's really just a function of you got to look at it like the company you might be working for now that provides you with health insurance, because we were there. That's one of the ways that they've got you, right? They've got you. There are alternatives. It's like anything else. You just budget for it. You budget for it. And we have private insurance that is, we pay $7,500 a year out of pocket in health expenses plus the insurance. It sounds like a lot, but I realized that I had limitless income earning potential by launching my own business. In the early days, that was kind of a big number, and yeah, it was something that I looked at carefully, and we really shopped around for insurance to try to save $25 a month and $30 a month or whatever. Today, I'll tell you what, I mean, we make so much more money doing what we're doing now than even my highest paying corporate job that it's nothing, right? It's the fear of that uncertainty. So like anything else, you budget for it, you save a little bit of money. The private insurance that we have saves us from something that's catastrophic. So if we had something where it's like, I had a major health issue, and we can talk about that if you'd like. But if you have something where it's like, $100,000 a year, $500,000 a year medical care, that's what it's there for. It's not going to cover your, in our case, like the doctor's visits when you're, taking your kids. Well, kids checkups are covered, but like basic things like that. So there's a way to make it work. And I'm speaking, as an American in Texas, and I know your audience, you probably have some people who are international as well, so I can't speak to other countries, but at least in the United States, there's a way to make it work.
Yeah, thank you for that. And, that was definitely one of the most detailed answers that I've received so far.
Hopefully it's helpful. I mean, the details matter. I was scared about this. I mean, that's why my sister works for a job, and bless her heart. That's one of the things that holds her back from ever doing something like this. And my parents, same thing. What do you do for health insurance? It's just we've been trained. What's interesting, if you study the history of health insurance and employment were two very separate things when health insurance first came into practice. It wasn't designed to be something that's latched to your employment. It was designed to be two separate things. Employers started offering it as a benefit because they knew it was one of the greatest ways to retain employees was by offering that benefit. So it's a golden handcuffs thing. It's like a silver handcuffs thing because it keeps you there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have just recently, a few days ago, the company that I work for, Intel Corporation, announced paid bonding leave for dads.
Oh, cool.
8 weeks. And I heard a couple of my coworkers who were planning, because my site is closing down, so that's kind of like my story.
Yeah.
In March. But a couple of my coworkers who were going to leave Intel altogether, made a couple of jokes. Man, now I think I need to stay with Intel because of this paid bonding leave, right? So, and that's the mindset, like you're saying, is that it kind of keeps you. It makes you feel like you have to stay because you need this coverage.
Put it this way: once you understand consumer psychology, and this is something I've spent, this is where I've invested my 10,000 hours, is understanding what motivates people, why they buy, the hidden psychology of so many different things. That's why our formula is so successful, because it incorporates so much psychology. But when you understand that the fear of loss is so much more powerful than the promise of gain, and you can understand when it's affecting you and what's really going on, it's extremely liberating. An example I always love to use is, so Joel, let me just imagine for a moment, right? I want you to imagine for a moment. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. You're sound asleep in bed, in your bedroom. Everyone's asleep in your house. And imagine I burst through your front door, run up to your bedroom, bang down the door and say, dude, I just had to wake you up because the car dealership in town is having this giveaway for tires. They're giving away a set of tires for free, but you have to come now and you have to get it. What would your reaction be?
Jump out.
Like, what the hell's wrong with you, man? Like you'd be smacking me, saying like, why the hell did you wake me up like for that? But imagine a different scenario. Imagine the same thing. I run up, bang down your front door, run upstairs, and I say, dude, there's someone in your driveway right now that's jacking your car. He's ripping up the 4 tires on your car. They're about to leave right now.
Right.
You're gonna say, dude, thank you so much for telling me. You're gonna be down there. You're gonna be calling the police. You're gonna be all over it, right?
Right.
But what's the difference? The financial value is exactly the same. It's a set of 4 tires. But the fear of loss is so much more motivating than the promise of gain. And that example right there is such a great illustration. If you can just imagine yourself and the emotions you're experiencing in both of those situations, what's going on. When you understand that, that's happening on yourself, you can almost step outside your body and kind of have a conversation with yourself and say, Joel or Ryan, dude, you're just, it's a fear of loss thing going on right now. Do the calculation. It's really not that big of a deal. The 8 weeks paternity, bonding time, whatever you want to describe it, that's something that you can create in your business relatively easily. You can create a business model where you get to spend 8 weeks with, your children or do whatever. It's not just something that companies, big companies can create. You can create it yourself. And when you kind of think like that, and I know it's one of these things where, confidence comes from taking action and getting results, which leads to more confidence, which leads you to take more action and get more results. It's like that positive reinforcement cycle. I know like Tony Robbins talks about this. There are a lot of people in the sort of self-help personal development that talk about this. But what is it predicated on? Taking that first step.
Yeah.
And for me, the thing that held me back, and I want to share this piece of advice, and I know I'm like hijacking your interview here, just like rambling on this stuff, is the thing that held me back is I used to have this little piece of paper in my wallet when I was first getting started, and the piece of paper said, at the time, the big money for me, like I thought it was like the biggest money I would ever make is I wanted to make $20,000 a month in passive income. That was like my big goal. Like if I can make $20,000 a month in passive income, how could I want anything more in life? That's everything.
Right. Like what else do you want? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If I do that, I can retire, be done. Well, you soon realize that when you hit your goals, the horizon never is always the horizon. But going back to that, when I had that big ass goal, I struggled. And I would read it in the mirror. I'd look myself in the mirror every single day. I'd take the piece of paper out at my lunch break, and I would say it, and I'd memorize it. And the reason why I realized later is that big goals like that are scary. Any change in your brain, because again, I have a background in neuroscience, and I'm really obsessed with this stuff. Your brain perceives it as a threat. There's an area in your brain known as the limbic system, and there's a structure within the limbic system known as the amygdala, which regulates your fight or flight response. Right. And when you are asked to do something, even if it's a positive change, which is like messed up about our brain, that's too big, we get into fight or flight mode and we do nothing. Because it's really fight, flight, or freeze, right? Freeze is like where we just stay in our current environment because we're scared crapless to do anything. So what I realized is that the secret was to break down your goal so that the next immediate step, and this is important, if anybody's listening to this is like a writer downer, is so small, it's impossible to fail. And if your next step is bigger than that, you need to shrink the size of the step. So for example, instead of thinking about how you're going to make $20,000 a month, which is like a goal I was fixated on, the questions I started asking myself were, how can I make one sale? How can I make one sale? I can do that. Right. And if that's too big of a goal, how can I post something online for sale? Oh, crap. When you think like that, you're like, I can just post something on eBay, post something on Craigslist. Maybe I could create something on Gumtree or something like that.
Right.
And that's when I got momentum. In fact, I kept asking myself, and remember I told you how we went from $0 to $25,000 a month in 18 months? You want to know the question I was always asking myself? It was, what can I do to grow the business by $500 this month? That's it. Because $500 was a small enough number that I believed in. I could say things like, well, if we could only get 10 more visitors to our website every single day, I can make an extra $500. So how do I get 10 more visitors? Well, if I do this, I can get 2 visitors. If I do this, I can get 4 visitors. And all of a sudden, by shrinking things down to be so small like that, it became manageable. And what's amazing is that when you're aiming for 500, pretty soon, before you know it, you accidentally make $3,000, right? And when you make $3,000, you're like, oh, crap, I made an extra $10,000. That's just what happens. But it's all predicated on doing that one thing. So if you're starting from scratch, forget trying to think about your business. My recommendation, the thing that I advise people who are just starting from ground zero, is ask yourself how you can sell one thing in the next 48 hours. Go online and sell one thing in 48 hours. If you can't do that, you really need to rethink how motivated you are. Because anybody can sell something online for in 48 hours. I mean, I could post myself on Craigslist and say, I will do junk around your house, whatever it takes. I'll clean your floors. I'll fix something for you. I'll shovel your driveway, whatever. Within 48 hours, I can do that. I can sell stuff on eBay in the next 48 hours, right? You can, I mean, so anybody, excuse me, anybody can do it. But those are the questions that I started asking myself, and it was like everything, the switch flipped at that point. So it's one of the biggest pieces of advice I give people who are starting from ground zero is disregard the advice to dream big. Dream big is fine, but then take it down to something that's so small that it is literally impossible for you to fail.
Yeah. And you know, our favorite quote on Startup Dad headquarters is the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
That's it, man. It's right there. That's right there.
Absolutely love that. And I was just talking to a close friend of mine this morning, and I told him, hey, my goal is $15,000 by the end of this year, $15,000 at the end of this year per month.
Yep.
And I told him I dialed it back, and I said, if I start in March, what would that number need to be? And it was $50. I need to sell $50 in March, double it in April, double it in May, and just start from there. And when I looked at it from that perspective, $50 was like, oh yeah, I could do that easily.
Yep.
That's no doubt.
That's the thing. It's you know, people, no one sees the snowball when it's this big, right? When you're making snowmen in the yard or whatever, it's when it's this big, no one cares. But before you know it, the thing gets big, and it gets big pretty fast. And it's that hockey stick growth pattern that I've seen so many times. And you know, I've seen the same thing in our business. And people say it like every plateau that you reach in your business, it's the same thing. People say the first $1 million is the toughest to make. You know, we went from 1 million to 2 million. The first $1 million was like, oh my gosh. $1 million to 2 was like, I mean, my wife and I were like, oh, okay, great. All right, let's move on. I mean, it's a blip in the radar screen, but It happens at every level. It doesn't matter where you're at. You make that first 1,000, going from 0 to 1,000 is infinitely more difficult than 1,000 to 2,000. It's just the way it is. The analogy I always use, it's like a rocket ship, right? A rocket ship that you're shooting off into space uses something like 95% of the fuel to get off the ground, like the first 10 miles off the ground, and then the next 100,000 miles uses less than 5% of the fuel. So getting your rocket ship off the ground is truly the toughest thing, but once you're there, man, momentum is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Ryan. And by the way, I'm from Brooklyn, so if you came running up my steps, I would have jumped out of bed. You would have been in trouble, man.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Where in Brooklyn are you from?
Flatbush.
Okay. We lived in, first place that we lived out of college was in the Upper East Side, but I had friends in Brooklyn, and we lived in a junk studio apartment. It was my fiance, who's now my wife. Tiny little apartment, 4-story walk up. I mean, it was not pleasant, but we did it, and it was expensive as all get up, but we did it. Yeah, man. So this city's a great place.
Nice. Right. Knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently from the start?
The biggest thing, and I mentioned earlier, is I would have hired sooner. I was reluctant to hire because we're clinging on to every cent of profit. That's, if I have one regret, if I can call it a regret, was being slow to hire, because we've achieved great success, but I think we could have cut the time maybe in half to be where we are today. If I'd kind of let the leash out a little bit looser and been a little bit more aggressive in hiring a team and outsourcing rather than insisting on trying to learn and do everything myself. It's a tough call to make, but I've come to appreciate that if your time is worth $100 an hour or $50 an hour or whatever, there are people out there that will do tasks that you're doing now for $10, $15, $20 an hour. And you want to get in that game sooner rather than later, where you're hiring out those tasks. And some of it can be business tasks, but some of it can be domestic tasks as well, like cleaning your house. We have a housekeeper. We have a handyman. I'm not really handy, and I don't enjoy stuff like that, so we bring in Larry, I think at $15 an hour. He fixes anything that breaks in the house, rather than me spending my weekends fixing stuff. We have a nanny that helps with the kids, which isn't something that, it's not a way for us to not be with the kids. What it enables us to do is the time that we do spend with our kids is all quality time, right? It's, we get to play with our kids. We get to have fun and do the things that we want to do, rather than, cleaning diapers and washing bottles, which is noble. It's fine. I mean, we've done it. But all of those things that you may or may not enjoy doing, there are people out there that you can pay to do them. And it's domestic, like the ones I described. It's also in your business as well, hiring an assistant, hiring a copywriter, hiring a technical person to help you build your website. All of these skills are hireable. What's not hireable is the leader. You cannot hire someone who is going to architect and design your business for you. Anybody who has that skill, that drive, that motivation, whatever you want to describe it as, they're doing it for themselves. You could not hire me to build your business for you, right? You just couldn't. In the same way that I couldn't hire someone else that has those intangibles. That's the one thing that you can't replicate. And as a business owner, an entrepreneur, whatever you want to describe it as, that's where you want to be spending your time. Predict and delegate.
Predict and validate. Yeah, awesome. So, Ryan, we're entering the final segment of the show. I like to call this the rapid fire handyman segment. So we can talk about being a handyman.
I just admitted I'm a terrible handyman, so I don't know how well I'm going to do. I'll do my best.
And this is where we quickly reach into your toolbox and you provide the Startup Dad community with some really useful tools. And in this segment, we have both Henry and Bradley. Both Henry and Bradley are calling to you. Bradley's crying. He's a little baby, so he's crying. Yeah. And Henry's basically knocking on the door saying, "Hey, Dad, come out. Let's play with the Lego set." Yep. So we want to fire through these questions as quickly as possible.
Let's do it.
What is your number one time management hacker tool?
Delegating.
Nice. What's one personal habit you believe attributes to your success as a father, husband, and entrepreneur?
Eliminating decision fatigue, wearing the same shirt every single day, eating the same thing every single day, having the same routine every single day, frees up the creative part of my brain to focus on the stuff that really matters and leaves me not tired trying to figure out, well, what are we going to get in the groceries this week? What are we going to make for dinner? We know exactly what it is and frees up that creativity. So eliminating decision fatigue.
Yeah. What's one way you manage your health?
I work out with a trainer 3 times a week, and I eat very healthy. I've got green juice, fresh green juice that we make at home 7 days a week. I drink green smoothies 3 times a day and have fresh salads twice a day with lean protein. Eating very healthy, trying to work out as much as possible. And one thing that I'm working on is, with the little one it's tough, is get good sleep.
Mm. What's one book every startup dad should absolutely read?
One that comes to mind, there are many, Built to Sell. Yeah.
Awesome, Ryan. Thank you for firing through those.
I thought when you said handyman, you're going to be throwing hammers and screwdrivers, and I was going to get there'd be some tough questions in there. Those are actually, pretty manageable.
Awesome. So my final question is a little bit long, but it always produces really powerful answers, and here it is.
Okay.
On the other side of this broadcast is a startup dad who is absolutely fired up. He has that fire inside him, but it's starting to burn up because of this interview. But as soon as he shuts down his laptop or turn off his phone and goes back to the day-to-day minutia of things, getting lack of sleep and all those kind of things, he's going back to he's going to lose that fire. It's going to go down to a little spark. What would you say to that dad to inspire him beyond this broadcast?
Start with your why. Why are you doing it? Start with your why. Get really clear on that. So what is it? Write it down. Actually take the time in a journal. Write it down. Don't type it. Write it down by hand. What is your why? Why are you doing that? If you start with your why, what motivates you, beyond just making money, and getting crystal clear on that and reminding yourself of that every single day and putting the words on paper, then it gives you the clarity of focus, the direction, that compass that you need to move forward. And then the second thing that I would say is start small. Mm-hmm. Force yourself to sell something today. Anything. If you haven't sold anything, sell something today online. Make a commitment to do it, whatever it takes. Don't go to bed tonight until you do it. Even if it's a $5 thing, prove to yourself that you can do it. And then let success beget success. You sold a $5 thing today, so tomorrow make it $10. And then $10, make it $20. And then $20, make it your first $100 day. And then $100 becomes your first $500 day. That's the name of the game. I've seen it played out. I've coached people through this process. I have clients who've gone through this process over and over again. This is how we did it. Listen, I'm telling you, that's all it is. It's starting small, taking immediate action while this is fresh in your mind, while you're jazzed up. Don't let it get on the back burner. Do it today.
Ryan, thank you for your time. Thank you for your sharing your startup dad journey, and for truly inspiring and your wealth of knowledge. The episode has been amazing. I know it's been a little bit longer than usual, but I think that I know the startup dads are going to listen through this entire episode. So thank you again for taking the time out to talk with us. Please take a few minutes, plug in anything, how the startup dads could find you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd love to do, because like I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, the thing that has me most excited right now is our new book, Ask. And as you can imagine, to work with my company and me privately or in an involved relationship is very expensive. It's really something that's only for larger businesses. But I really want to get this process that I've used to enter market after market in as many business owners' hands as possible and as many startup dads' hands as possible. So I thought it'd be cool, if you're cool with it, I'd love to just give away a couple copies of the book. And this is a physical book, and I'd love to just, ship a copy of the book on me. And so if you are interested, if you kind of like what we talked about today and you'd love to grab one of these, the copies of the book, here's what you need to do. The URL to go to is askformula.com / what do we say, Startup Dad?
Startup Dad 2015?
Yeah, so askformula.com / Startup Dad is the URL to go to. When you get to that page, you're going to see the book retails for $24.95, and this is the important part. I'm going to give you a coupon code that's going to make the book free. So the coupon code is StartupDad2015. StartupDad 2015. It's going to take the book from $24.95 to totally free. No credit card required or anything like that. I'm going to basically buy you a physical book. I'm going to ship it to you on me, cover the postage wherever you are, and I've got 50 copies that we're going to do this for. First come, first serve. The book comes out in March, and this is an opportunity to get your hands on a copy as soon as it's released, before it's made available to the general public. So I'd be an honor to be able to share that with you, just really as a way of saying thanks, Joel, for the opportunity to just be here and share with your audience. Thanks to you, my man, for being such an awesome host, and really just it's a cool way to give back. So I think that would be a great way to learn more about everything we talked about and how to take it from these ideas and theories and concepts to, okay, well, how do I do this step by step? This is the book for you. And by the way, the book also goes much deeper into my personal journey, the ups and downs. We heard a little bit about the failures. We didn't talk about how I almost died 3 years ago. I was in the hospital for a couple weeks. There's that story in there, the story of the birth of our son and how that impacted things in our business. And it's really, I think, an inspiring story for anybody who's starting at this level, as well as a very informational step-by-step process that anybody can apply in their business to get started. So I'd love to give away a few copies of that. And I just want to say thanks again, my man, for the opportunity to be here with you here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. I am so honored that you came on the show. I can't wait to get my hands on the book. And I know there's that story in there, that letter to your mom, that I'm looking for as well. So.
Oh, man, when you read that thing's so embarrassing. But it is, I'm telling you, man, it is raw. Is uncut. That's exactly emotionally what I was going through, and no one had ever seen it except for my mom and me. So I told my publisher about it, and she said, let me take a look. And she said, Ryan, this has to go in here. Every entrepreneur needs to read this letter. If nothing else, I think that letter alone is worth the read in the book.
Yeah, thank you for such a generous offer to the Startup Dad community. I know they will definitely take you up on it, and that's askformula.com / Startup Dad, and then the code is Startup Dad 2015.
You got it.
Awesome, Ryan. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks, man.
right now and download your free guide called 9 Apps Every Startup Dad Should Have in His Toolbox. It's only available at startupdadhq.com/free gift. Again, that's startupdadhq.com/free gift. So go download it now, and we'll see you next time on Startup Dad HQ.